Okay, welcome to the Get Signed and Succeed podcast, week 2. My name is Bruce Badgley, and I'm joined by Andrew Cohen of GetRecruitedConsulting.com and our buddy Craig Cox of One Consulting Services. I'll tell you what, it's fantastic to be back again. We're trying to get things a little bit smoother than where they were the last week there. But thanks for joining us, Andrew, Coach Cox. I'll tell you what, we're into week 2, and we had a lot of great comments. We had a lot of great feedback from last week's show. And I can't wait for this week's topic, which is mass recruiting versus personal recruiting. So, Andrew, I'll tell you what, we'll start with you. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you would consider the definition of mass recruiting to be?
So mass recruiting is recruiting in a very general sense. So it's getting emails, and it's nice to get emails, but initially the mass emails are not real specific to the student athlete. So they're mass emails inviting you to a camp, maybe inviting you to a virtual tour, or just saying, we've heard you're a good athlete or a good prospective student athlete. So everything's on a general idea of recruiting, rather than the real recruiting, which would be the coaches either calling you or direct messaging you on Twitter with regularity. You know, one phone call doesn't always mean that they really have interest. They might just be gathering information. But when they continually reach out on the phone on a regular basis on the proper times, that definitely means they have interest. Or when they're texting you on your phone or direct messaging you, most likely on Twitter. So that's real versus the general sense. And then also, instead of getting form letters that you'll get sometimes, you're getting handwritten letters from the coaches. A lot of staffs with the kids that they like a lot, they'll have every coach on the staff write a letter to the student athlete just to show the student athlete that they have serious interest in them.
And that's a handwritten letter, right? I mean, if you get a handwritten letter from a coach, you have to believe that that's kind of just a telltale sign that they actually do have some interest in you, right?
Yes, I mean, so they're putting in time that pertains to you specifically. So typically that means definitely there's real interest. If not, they're not a very good coaching staff because they don't have the time to put into writing letters if the student athlete is not someone they're excited about.
Coach Cox, what's your definition of, mass recruiting, and, how that kind of cascades down through all the kids that are looking to try and get to the next level?
I agree with Coach. I mean, the biggest thing you see in mass recruiting is those mass letters that go out. And, the students get them, they're excited about them, such and such university has sent me a letter. But like he said, if it's not a handwritten letter, if it's just a form letter, just showing interest or maybe inviting you to their camp, where they send out to, hundreds or even thousands of other students. I mean, it's a big difference than when you get a handwritten note or a personal phone call. I know a lot of students think when they get followed on Twitter by a coach, they think, okay, this coach is recruiting me, even though the coach hasn't even direct messaged them or even talked to them, or may have made one comment here. But coaches, you definitely want, if you're recruiting a student athlete, you want to be able to get in contact one way or the other with that athlete almost every week. So I know there's limitations on when you can call, but the easiest thing you can do is pick up your phone and text the person and say, hey, call me, and then it's legal.
Yeah. Let me interject, something that sometimes scares me as one that's helping kids recruiting, but also as a parent myself of 2 student athletes. Sometimes families get these mass emails or anything in mass reaching out, and they really think that this Division I school is really recruiting my son, which is great. And I don't mean to be negative, but the scary thing is until you get an offer from someone that excites you, you should never turn down a school that is still reaching out to you. So, hey, my son's a D1 guy, he's getting all these letters and he's getting these emails. Yeah, but you haven't gotten an offer yet. And until you get an offer that you're excited about, you need to listen to everyone and you need to be interactive with the coaches, or else you could be turning down an opportunity that maybe later on you would have wished you listened to. So until it's official and you've been offered and that's better than the other opportunities you have, don't shut anyone down, especially if it's a strong academic school. So just
My,
2 cents on that.
yeah, my opinion, I shouldn't say opinion, but what I see a lot of related to what I consider to be mass recruiting are these databases that are soliciting kids to, hey, put in your profile, and and go through the time and effort and sometimes money of putting all this information out there, that quite honestly, a lot of these organizations, what are they doing with it? You don't have any idea of, oh yeah, we've got this database or whatever, and they're saying that college coaches are accessing that database, but how do you know that? I mean, there are some recruiting services that says, yeah, put in a profile, and when that you're notified of when somebody looks at your information. But so many of these are just like, they're putting it off into this database and it just goes off into oblivion. What do you think, Coach Cox?
I mean, I agree with you on that. I mean, like you said, with those other services, just if a coach clicks on the email instead of hitting delete, like like I probably would most of those services anyway. If they just click on the email, the company gets something back and lets the student know, oh, such and such university looks at your profile. That don't necessarily mean we looked at your profile or that we're even interested in recruiting you as a student athlete.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's great that someone looks at your information, okay, but now, someone needs to follow up with them to get a real impression of do they have real interest or not. You know what I mean? Like, that's why when I started the business, I said, the emails even 10 years ago was getting tougher and tougher to get responses, but it's still nothing better than picking up the phone, calling the coach, right, and finding out where he really stands. But I do feel that at some point, when we continue to have to track them down again and again and again, they're not getting back to either myself or the student athlete, that's usually the indicator of what their real level of interest is, And so the camp thing now, there's some truth to it when they're saying, they're sending out these mass emails, but if they're really real recruiting and they really want to see a kid, they're going to text them or message them, and they're going to work hard to get them to come to the camp.
Sure.
But there is a lot of these mass emails inviting the camps, and I don't know if it's money makers as much as it's just they want to get as many kids there as possible. I don't always know the answer. I know for me, when I coached, I wanted to get certain kids at our camp, and those were the kids that I liked something about on film, and now I wanted to see them compete in person. But it's a tough. It can be tough for a family to look into it and say, is this real or is this a mass email? So my clients are always emailing me their emails. I want to get all their information that they're getting from the colleges, but it's always a good first step, that email from the schools, and then we follow them back, right? So guys, if you get an email from a school, all right, respond, tell them of your interest, and then ask them a question and see if they're going to interact. And if they're not willing to interact, then either they're not really interested, or do you really want to be part of a program that can't even respond to you? So that's my take. And I'm sorry I went a little long-winded there.
No, but I think that's the important aspect, is you're long-winded, okay? And that's the difference between the mass recruiting and personal recruiting is there's some element of personality involved in what's going on. Okay. That there's give and take. Okay. That there is a person or someone that either a student or family member can contact directly to ask a question. And if you can't answer that question at that time, that someone's going to get back to you with the answer to that question. And I think that that's the single biggest difference between obviously mass recruiting, which is great, to where you can, if you're going to do it, where you can canvass a lot of schools to see whether there truly is, where you can do a lot of schools very quickly, or you can actually just focus in on doing an evaluation, and through personal recruiting, you can target the schools through an actual evaluation of your talent and fit to focus in on where you want to go. Right, Andrew?
Yeah, a little bit off the subject, but something you just said hit home. So I'm going to offer everyone listening that they can reach out to me for a free film evaluation. Okay, they can call me or they can direct message me on Twitter. But I think the process has to start with an accurate and a professional evaluation of your talents. And then from there, you can put together a realistic recruiting target schools. If you're looking at the wrong schools, if you're a Division II player and you're looking at all Division I schools, you're just going to really hurt the process for you. You might end up going Division III. So you got to get right to the point and go to the schools that do fit your profile athletically, academically, and socially. And I think that sometimes this mass recruiting, people get a little confused and they think that my son's really getting recruited, or the kid thinks, oh, this school really likes me. Well, unfortunately, hard to say this, but a lot of these schools might be sending out 10,000, 20,000 emails that are the same, and they can change their name, they could change the position in a different location. So they're pretty tricky like that. But if you look at a letter or an email, right, and you say to yourself, anyone could have gotten this same email, then they did. Now, if there's specific things about you in it and things that you did in the game, or your number, or your coach, or great win versus so-and-so, that's more real, and that's what you're looking for. But, sometimes we all want to look at the best for ourselves and our children. I get it. I have two of my own, but you got to get to the point. And does this place really like me? You know what I mean? And then I'll have families say, is it okay if I call the coach? Is it okay if I message the coach? And I say, it is. If you have a legitimate question, you should be able to ask them a question and they answer you. I will tell you that if they're bothered by answering your question, that should indicate either A, their level of interest, or B, the type of person they are. Okay. I will tell you, though, as a former college coach, that if I was interested in a young man and they were calling me, then I'd be very excited they were calling me, and I'd want to impress them, and I'd want to show the real interest. And without being arrogant, I kind of want to impress them. You know what I mean? Now, if a kid reached out and there wasn't a kid I was excited about, I would always be nice, but I might somehow find a way to kind of say, maybe, what other schools you're looking at, maybe you should look at, some other places, but I would never be rude. I would always answer their questions, but I was just in favor of never leading anyone on. One, it helped them in the process. Two, it helped us because we can't be wasting our time as a college coach recruiting kids that don't fit your profile either athletically or academically. So,
Coach Cox, talk a little bit about, aren't there differences also in offers in what is actually, an enforceable offer?
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that.
Let me touch on one other thing that kind of what Coach was talking about too, from an academic standpoint, because I know Coach was at a lot of colleges and universities with very high academic standards. So in that initial process where you're really getting, like Coach called it, the gathering phase, when you're getting people that you might be interested in recruiting. And that's when students may think they're actually being recruited. That's the mass recruiting part of it before you get to the really narrowing it down. You got to understand, if you're a student athlete and you have less than a 3.0, there's only 51% of the schools in the country that you can get into. So if you're thinking that you're going to a high academic school, like I know Coach and I was talking the other day, those offers from those schools are contingent on you getting accepted into school. So if that school is usually only taking in students with a 3.8, 3.9, or 4.0, and you had a 3.0, you got to understand that offer is contingent on you getting in. So that's
and
one
listen,
thing.
I just want to interject here. We have a quick question through our live chat, and this looks like it's from Jorge. And he's asking, at what grade should you start with the recruiting process?
I think that I'm going to start off by saying I think it depends on how you define the process. I think the developmental part of the process starts in the 8th, definitely 9th grade. The developmental part, what I mean is eating right, sleeping right, having some type of resistance training, if it's lifting or if it's push-ups and whatnot, and running. So that part of it definitely starts in 8th or 9th, the latest. From there, depending on what level, the reaching out to the college coaches and getting direct answers and things is typically 9th grade, probably on the earlier side, but definitely by 10th grade.
Right.
And it does depend on the position, and it does depend on the level of play. Like quarterbacks are the earliest of any position, and to be an FBS, a Power 5 quarterback, a lot of times they're making their final decisions on 10th graders, and they do offer 9th graders. So it's been earlier and earlier, but my thought in the process is by 9th grade, getting yourself out there on social media, but most importantly, preparing yourself to do the right things, to prepare yourself so in another year, you do have the opportunities you want. But if you don't work on your development and you don't become the best product possible, you could be limiting your opportunities.
So, and getting back to topic, mass recruiting versus the personal aspect of recruiting, Coach Cox. I just touched briefly on the whole thing about what is truly an offer.
Right.
I mean, there's enforceable or otherwise, and so talk about what a mass offer might be, and talk about what obviously and I think you talked a little bit about that, Andrew, just momentarily or briefly previously, is like what a personal offer might look like.
Well, one, I mean, we consider a committable offer.
Committable.
Because you have schools throwing out way more offers than they obviously can take, and number of students that they can accept and have scholarships for. So universities throw out a lot more scholarships because in the beginning, most of those offers are non-committable offers. But students are, they get excited. They got offered by such and such university, and they're excited about it. But ask the coach if you really want to know, okay, can I commit to this offer right now? And most of them are going to say, well, it's going to be contingent on your academics. You still got to meet the head coach. You got to come to camp. And so then it's a non-committable offer. And kind of piggybacking on what Coach said before, even if you do get an offer by an FCS or FBS program, one of these non-committable offers, don't shut your recruiting down to D2s and or FCS programs. I've seen it happen so many times, and like Coach said, you left out at the end of the day because you got one offer from someone and it was a non-committable offer because they might have seen you at camp and liked your size, but hadn't watched your film yet. I mean, I've seen offers go out for all kinds of reasons, but that's the biggest thing. Is the offer committable or not? And once you find that out, then you really know where you stand.
Is that something that is an easy question? To me, it doesn't sound like that would be an easy question for a student athlete to ask.
So the question is, so when I have a student athlete I'm working with and they say they get an offer, I tell them, okay, ask them if it's committable. Okay. Doesn't mean you're committing, but you want to know. And then 2, I want to hear that I get the offer from the head coach. And if they're not willing to put them on the phone or somehow make that connection, then that's pretty, I think that would be concerning. Okay. I want to go over quickly. There's different ways of offering at different schools as well. So meaning, I don't know how many people have heard of the NESCAC, New England Small School Athletic Conference, like Bowdoin and Amherst and Middlebury and Williams. It's the Ivy League of Division III. Okay, they do get some push in admissions, but limited. It's very difficult to get in, and it's a good level of football. But when I was a head coach at Hamilton in that conference, we couldn't tell a kid, we'd say, if you go early decision, we couldn't tell them they're going to get in, but we were allowed to tell them that their information has been reviewed by admissions, usually a transcript, a resume, a school profile. And we were allowed to tell them that I can't guarantee you're getting into school. However, we're supporting your application. As long as you continue to do the same work, if not better, your application is done extremely well, and you stay out of trouble, we see good things ahead where we can work this out. So that basically puts it in their court, and in that conference, they know that as long as a kid continues to do good work, that means that's an offer. That's about as the best they'll do. You know what I mean? They're not allowed to say you're in. In the Ivy League, it's typically, we're going to support your application. They have 28 kids a year in each of the Ivy League schools that they can help. And they say, we're going to support your application. They could be a little more aggressive. And part of that's Division I versus Division III. Okay. And then you have, let's say, the FCS Patriot League, Lehigh, Lafayette, Colgate, Holy Cross, Bucknell, Fordham. And they're not as strict with how they deliver it. They typically say, we're offering you and we can get you into school. Now, you would think common sense would tell you that a college coach should not be offering you until you've been cleared not only by their coaches, but by admissions. I'd like to tell you that everyone does it that way. They should, but they don't. I've had kids that got an offer, and then I'm saying to myself, he's not academically strong enough to go to school A or B. But they don't always do their homework, or they're just rushing and they're excited and they want to get a kid offered. But the reality
They want to
is,
get out there on social media and say, hey, I got this offer.
yeah, well, I'm talking about the colleges that are doing this. And the colleges have, if it's the Ivy, the Patriot, the NESCAC, there's very certain standards, and if you don't meet those standards, they're not getting you in. The Ivy League, everyone in the Ivy League, everyone in the Patriot League has what's called a floor, the lowest they can go. And we really like this kid. No, there's a league floor, the lowest you can go. That's a rule. Whereas the NESCAC is Division III, they have less pull. They have a floor, but it's not official. It's not a number. They're looking at the whole process. They're looking at, and I'm sorry, I'm getting off the subject here, but in the NESCAC, they're looking at the big picture, the kind of school, the kind of classes. They have to take AP classes. So in my experience, their transcript evaluation for a football player is the most difficult. So.
Yeah. And Coach Cox, talk a little bit about, obviously you're in the academic arena of focus in this recruiting process. Talk a little bit about some of the things that if a student athlete wants a personal approach to, obviously you're familiar with that with your own, one-of-one consulting. What are some of the, mass type of approaches that student athletes should, be on the lookout for?
In regards to,
well, regarding academics or what have you, that they're gonna, improve your standing, if it's gonna get your information out there.
as far as recruiting services,
Recruiting services there. Is that pretty prevalent? Is that something that these student athletes are being taken advantage of?
Well, we kind of talked a little bit about that last week, and I don't, I do feel like a lot of the services like that are taking advantage of the students. They're just, pretty much a number. They don't have the one-on-one, contact. The recruiting services aren't calling the college coaches. They don't really look into the academics to see if the student will even get accepted in the school. That's one thing I really had an issue with when I was coaching at Campbell. We had a little bit higher academic standards than other places I've been. and you'll be getting these all these suggested recruits from these recruiting services with students with under a 2.0. And there's no way you're able to get them in school.
Sure.
So absolutely, I think you got to be careful, and that's one thing Coach Cohen is really good with. He's going to let you know what level is going to be best for you, not just athletically, but academically as well.
Yeah, I think that overall, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the key element here in mass recruiting versus, the personal approach there is obviously there's going to be some feedback with, the personal approach. And there's going to be give and take from, as you touched on, Andrew, on the fact that college coaches, or there'll be an answer to a question that if the student athlete has a question related to, committable offer, can I speak to the head coach? You should be able to get an answer back from someone, whether it be on the coaching staff or some other person in the athletic department, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think that if you're important to them, they're gonna find a way to respond. Now, sometimes, not everyone does the best job, or some guys are maybe lazy, and that's no one in particular, but it happens, And I finally tracked the coach down. He's like, "Oh yeah, we love that kid." And then they call him. It's like, well, if you love that kid, then you need to be giving him consistent attention, But like for me, it was when I was coaching, I wanted that kid to know that we wanted him more than the other schools. So that meant I wanted to call him more, I wanted to text him more, I wanted to write him more letters. I wanted to do more than my competition. So,
And talk a little about too the fact that the relationship that look, these coaches are all busy, as we've touched on, the fact that they're being barraged not only by all of this mass stuff that gets thrown at them. They're being called and text. I see so many times high school coaches are wondering why college coaches don't answer their phone calls or their texts or their emails. And, a lot of it is the volume, and the personal aspect of recruiting kind of breaks down all that, because there's typically relationships with certain coaches that those coaches are going to pay attention to that individual because he knows they're not going to be wasting their time. And B, that it's very much the same kind of reputation for the person presenting the athlete, is that it's your reputation on the line, right?
yeah, and I think that I'm careful not to be too judgmental of the college coaches, because remember, they are coaches first, and recruiting is a big part of their job, but they're the ones doing both. They're coaching, they're mentoring, they got a family, and they're recruiting. And it does get to the point right now, they're getting an amazing amount of emails, text messages, and all that. And the better recruiters do a great job of, sculpting their list of kids that are really the right fit. Very good players, but not too good, or a very good student if they're not in the Ivy League, but not the very best student. So they're targeting the right crowd, just like the student athlete is targeting the right schools for them. So they're both doing something really that's very similar. You know what I mean? But when you got the major colleges, a lot of people reach out to these FBS guys, but they might have, 5 recruiting graduate assistants and director of football operations, and this, they have a lot more help. But when you're at even the FCS level or down, their staffing situations are not near that. And it's hard for them to keep up all the time. And that's why for us, our relationships help, because we can cut through it. And especially with a lot of the guys that we know on a personal level, and they realize that we're only sending them kids that fit their profile, that they're good enough players, they're good enough students, and they do have interest. We don't send a Division III player to a Division I school. And that's where some of the services get cut off, because they don't want to bother anymore, because there's really no connection with the kid and the institution they're sending the information to.
And I would say that that's probably the one of the major differences between, the mass recruiting and the personal recruiting is the fact that they don't care. They're just sending these things out in mass. And it's the job of the coach to kind of disseminate through to try and figure out who is or isn't a good fit for the school, where the personal approach cuts through all of that and really is that support avenue for that coach, that he can trust that individual, that it's somebody that it makes sense for them to devote some time to research whether or not he would or would not be a good fit for the school, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, like I said a minute ago, the student athletes and their families need some help with putting together an accurate game plan of schools they should be looking at, which in turn will save them tons of money in the long run by going to the right camps. As they're doing that, the college coaches need to do that as well. They can't be dealing with kids that aren't good enough or that can't get in. So academically, every coach knows what the requirements are for their school. It might not be exact, but they have a pretty good idea, and they shouldn't be talking to kids that are way off. But I've been around it. I'm sure you have, Coach Cox, guys on your staff that are still talking to kids, and you're like, he's never going to get in. Why are we talking to him? And it happens. Or, hey, that kid's an offensive lineman. We're Division I. He's 6'1.5". We're not going to take him. Our offensive line coach doesn't take kids under 6'3". I don't know why, but that stuff does happen. But I think to be a good recruiter, you need to target. That's what I used to teach my coaches that I worked with. And then to be a good student athlete and a family, you got to find out what schools your son should really be looking at academically and athletically.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to get on screen here now, and everybody here is seeing, Andrew's phone number, at Get Recruited is the Twitter handle, email.
Those two underscores, by the way. It's Get _ recruited, capital G, capital R.
Okay.
But so what I'm offering this evening is anyone that's listening and has interest, okay, you can call me, you can text me, you can message me on Twitter and send your film also and say you were on the podcast and you would like a recruiting evaluation. And I would want to do that with the student athlete and the parent, at least one parent and the student athlete. I'd like to be present. And that's usually a 15-20 minute meeting. And I'll also answer specific questions that you might have, but it's extremely valuable to know where you're at right now as a player. And then obviously you should want to know what you need to do to achieve playing at a higher level.
Yeah. And I guess the thing that I'm always impressed with is the fact that, you actually do pick up your phone. When people do call you, you're one of the guys that does pick up your phone. And if you can't talk to the individual there, you'll let them know when you can get back to them. And that's the best part about, dealing with Coach Cohen there. And Coach Cox, talk a little bit about, one-of-one consulting there. And, for next week, want to make sure that I get a nice slide where I can get your contact information up on screen there as well during the broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. If any, Coach, if any students or parents would love to learn more, I teach the things that successful people do that's going to help you, not just in the classroom, but on the field and in life. And my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is at one-of-one life skills. And it's the number one life skills. You can also call me or text me. My phone number is 704-267-1025. And I look forward to talking with anybody who has any questions of, any way I can help them be successful. My goal is to change the percentages. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that type of stuff next week. I believe the title is How to Find the Right College Fit for You. And we're going to talk a little bit about graduation rates, retention rates, and how to make sure that you find the right fit for you so that you don't fall into those percentages.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into obviously next week's show, how to find the right college fit for you and for your family too. It isn't necessarily even the individual athlete. It's what's going to fit best for the athlete and the family in, a college. And that'll be a great show. I'm looking forward to that. So I tell you what, the end of our second show here, we've had some really nice interaction here. I've got actually I got one guy. We just had it up on screen here. I will get back to Armando with your phone number, Andrew, and then Jorge again. Tell Andrew I will contact him next week. So Jorge Burgos, okay, who was following along through the entire broadcast.
Awesome.
He's basically making a commitment that he'll get to you here this week, Coach. He saw your phone number there, so he's going to get back to you, and I will get back to Armando with your email and contact information as well. I tell you, the live chat was really hopping tonight, guys. What do you think?
It's good stuff. We really want to share as much information we can to help families. And I think this will grow each week. And please, if you have a question, if you want to have a consultation, I'd love that. But if you have specific questions for Coach Cox or myself, please reach out. Don't hesitate, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on a text, whatever it might be, or you can look at our website, has all that information as well. But we appreciate everyone being on our podcast, and we're excited to continue to grow and share some great information with everyone.
Yeah, and these broadcasts are all archived on the Sports Stream Premium YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, gang, and then when these shows go live. They're all archived there. You can watch them on demand anytime. I know that between Coach Cox and Coach Cohen and myself, that we're going to continue to get all these links out of not only the upcoming show, but really everybody needs to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that they can see all of these archive shows. It's just a great archive of information to go back through and say, oh, what did Coach Cohen say in week 2? Hey, let's go back there and let's check that out, because that's the luxury of on demand. That's kind of the way that people are watching their television and watching their shows now. I mean, we do it live, but it's also on demand for whenever you want to. Or I've had a couple guys talk to me about the fact that they're listening to these shows in the car, going to work in the morning or going to school. I mean, that's good stuff too. Just throw it up on the phone and listen to it while you're going to school or to work. So good stuff. So anyway, well listen,
thank you very much, both Bruce and Craig. I appreciate you guys very much and the hard work you do to help the student athletes. Everyone, please be safe this evening and feel free to share any of our information, Coach Cox's information, Badgley, and myself, with any of your contacts. And as the show grows, it'll get more exciting. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for stopping by here week 2. And next week, more great topics as we continue on down the road of college football recruiting from every aspect, from getting in the door to improving your academics and improving your life skills so that it goes beyond football. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be back again live 7:30 next Sunday, I believe.
No. Is it? No, next one is Monday, right?
Monday night.
24th at 8 p.m.
Yeah, 24th. That's a
Come
Monday
on,
night.
Badge.
Well, doing my best.
I'm just playing.
Doing a great job.
Thank you very much. You're doing awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks
Have a
a lot.
blessed night.
All right.
Okay, take care. So long, everybody.